The Christian life is not a playground, it's a battleground. So today, I will give no place to fear or failure. I will not accept a trace of apathy in my attitude or actions. I will reject complacency and embrace the greatness that God has planted inside of me. I will waste no opportunity to glorify God and maximize everything He has entrusted to me. I will fight. My battle is not against flesh and blood, but against a spiritual enemy who opposes me. So I will draw the battle lines and face my enemy with a bold determination. My enemy fights against me because he fears me. Every time I resist him, he must flee. And every time he reminds me of my past, I will remind him of his future. I will make no excuses, but through every obstacle I will find a way. I will not procrastinate my progress. I will not defer my destiny. I will not waver when I'm weak. I will not cower when my circumstances take a turn for the worse. Because greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world. I will fight. Even if I lose the battle, I will win the war, because I am more than a conqueror through Him who loves me. I will reject the lies that echo in my mind, telling me that I don't have what it takes, that my best is behind me, or that humiliation awaits me. The devil is a liar, and my God always causes me to triumph. Through Jesus Christ, my Lord, I will fight.
I will fight. You excited to be at church today? You excited to fight? All right, let's go. Let's hop up. Let's run a marathon. Let's start running. We got to get our sprints in. Get these push-ups going. Get these bicep curls going. Come on, let's go. We got some workouts to do. I love that. We get juiced about the video pumps us up. But if we actually talked about doing what the video is portraying, you know what I mean? It gets like that. Let's actually go train. Let's actually go work it. And that's actually very similar to the topic we're going to talk about today, because if you haven't been paying attention, the last 3-4 letter words, we've talked about moving from here to there. We've talked about building hope up in your life. We've talked about seeking the kingdom of God and seeking the kingdom of God and His righteousness first in our lives. And we get really excited about these things, and we want to move in these things. But then when it actually comes time to train on it, when it actually comes time to build hope, to move from here to there, right, we get a little bit less. And this word that we're going to talk about this week is actually, I think, a factor. It's going to be a word that we've been talking about. It's going to be a word that's going to have to ooze from the pores of your souls. If you want to move, if you want to hope, if you want to seek the kingdom of God and put Him first, you're going to need this topic, this idea. If you want to move in your life, if you want more hope in your life, if you want to seek God and His kingdom like never before, you're going to need this word to get from here to there. And before I say the word, everybody has a here. Everybody has a here. Everybody here has a here. Everybody in this room has a here. What's your here? Your here is what's going on in your life. What's going on in your life right now, right here? What are you looking at right now? And everybody has a there. Where are you trying to get to? What's your here and what's your there? We all have different heres. We all have different theres. For some of us in the room, maybe you're asking the question, how do I get my kids from age 3 to age 13 while keeping my sanity? Maybe you're asking, how do I get from being single to married while still loving God and loving self? Maybe you're asking, how do I get my business from in the red to in the black, from here to there? How do I get from high school to college? How do I get from the workforce to retirement while still living in purpose? All types of different heres, all types of different theres. And if you actually want to move from here to there, you're going to have to enter a portal that no one is immune to. The writer of Hebrews tells us it this way. It's Hebrews 12:1. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders, the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance perseverance, the race marked out for us. The cool thing about that is that everybody here has a race marked out for you. It's a similar to what I've already been saying. Everyone here has it there. Everyone has a journey. Everyone has a next season. Everyone has the next pursuit. Everyone has a race marked out for you as you walk into this day, whether you've acknowledged it or not, whether it's in the conscious or the subconscious, you have a race marked out for you. And the writer of Hebrews is telling us we all have a race, and the way you're meant to run it is with perseverance. That's a tip. That's a tool. That's a trick of the trade, if you would. That's if you want to get from here to there and you want to do it really effectively, you're going to need this thing called perseverance. And that could really be our word, except for it's not a 4-letter word. It's a 12-letter word. So we're going to break it up into 3. No, I'm just kidding. The 4-letter word that you're going to need every time you have a setback in life or you feel stuck here, that this word oozes from the pores of your soul. That word is grit. Grit is passion and perseverance pointed at a worthwhile purpose. And grit is something that if you took a pulse of our society, most people would say our society has an issue with grit. All right, we have an interesting relationship with grit. Way back in the day when George Washington and such were fighting for independence, they did this thing where they were willing to do crazy things like cross the Delaware River when it was full of ice. Sometimes I think we get hindsight 2020 and maybe we haven't read enough history and we think those things must have just been easier. But it couldn't be further from the truth. These guys crossed the Delaware River when it's full of ice with little clothing, with missing boots, very unresourced, and they found a way to get across. Let alone not only finding a way to get across, but they found a way to get across. And do you know what day it was when they crossed the Delaware River? It was Christmas Day. Could you imagine today? All right, guys, come on. We've got a mission. We got a purpose. What are we doing? We're going to cross the Delaware River. What? When it's ice? Yeah. And the best kicker is you're not going to have the right amount of clothing or boots on. And on top of all that, you're going to miss Christmas Day with your family. Where's my Christmas bonus, George? You mean I'm working over hours? I don't feel like I'm getting paid for that extra hour. How many hours are you going to pay me for, George? And the crazy part is, as these guys showed up from town to town to town to town, showing frostbit limbs, do you know what was happening? People were signing up. More and more men were signing up for the war as they watched these tattered and battered soldiers walk into their pubs. Something was different. There was a grit within these men. There's a grit within that society. There's a grit within the women. If you do any type of history, if you do any type of research, you see there's this grit. And the definition that we put up there, passion and perseverance, pointed at a worthwhile purpose. We're not just making it up. That definition comes from Angela Lee Duckworth. She's a teacher turned psychologist. And she did a ton of research on this topic, grit. In fact, she wrote a book about it. And I would encourage everybody, if you can, take a quick snap picture of that and go buy this book and read through this book. It's something that as we continue to unfold this topic today, it's something that you're going to want to continue to instill and improve in your life. I want to show you quickly a 4-minute video of her talking about the importance of grit in life at a recent TED Talk. Check it out.
I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom, and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy. We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs. And who's going to earn the most money? In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure, things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and it is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition.
I love that last line. They don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. And we're going to come back to that a little bit later as well. But if you caught it, what she said, and what her book continued to reveal, is the number one greatest predictor of future success is grit. The number one greatest predictor of future success in your life, in your marriage, in parenting, in your finances, in your career. You could put all the talent even to the side. The number one greatest predictor of your future success, of your kids' future success, is grit. And you might be sitting here thinking, well, I don't feel like I have much grit. Maybe you're actually self-aware and you're actually able to ask yourself the question or be aware and going, and maybe you're giving yourself a negative assessment a little bit and going, you know what? I don't think I have very much grit. And if that's my way of success, then how am I possibly going to succeed? Or maybe you are in the room today and you feel like, no, this is actually a strength of mine. I know grit. I have grit. I always grew up with grit. I've just been innately blessed with grit. It's something I got in me. But the people around you, the people you're leading, the people you're influencing, maybe you even have a joined community network, or your coworkers, or the type of work life you're in, the people around you don't seem to have grit. And so it would be the same question. Well, if you're not just caring just about yourself and it's not just about interpersonal success for you, then maybe the question would be, how are we going to succeed if the people around me and the people I'm leading and the people I have influence over don't seem to have much grit? Well, since that TED Talk, right, if you heard her talk, she said she didn't really have the answer, but she continued to do more and more research. And Duckworth released her book, and she gave some great news surrounding grit. She came to the conclusion that grit is growable. She learned that you can grow grit. Grow grit. That's really good news. you can grow your grit. And if grit is the reason that you'll either succeed or fail, then it's really good news that you can grow grit. If we're being real in the room tonight, if I move the notes to the side, today, this morning, still morning, 11:44. If we're being at all real, we could go around the room and we all have varying levels of failures going on in our life. Some of you may be casting on your marriage. Some of you may be in your third or fourth relationship. Some of you have failed as parents. Some of you have missed the mark as parents. Some of you have gone off the rails on your finances. Some of you have missed the mark on your careers. Some of us have all types of stories around this thing, and we can watch a video and we can get pumped up and we can get excited, but then when we actually talk about, hey, this is what it's going to require for you to get from here to there, and you find out it's the number one greatest thing is a little bit of grit, a little bit of fight, a little bit of persistence, a little bit of perseverance, and you think, well, I don't know if I really have that in me, but then you find out the news that you can grow perseverance, you can grow persistence, you can grow fight, you can grow grit. And that's the reason, if I can grow that, then I can succeed. Now there's a little bit of beacon or a glimmer of hope for your marriage. There's a glimmer of hope for your parenting. There's a glimmer of hope for your finances. There's a glimmer of hope for your relationship. There's a glimmer of hope for your career. And that's really good news. You can help grow grit from the outside in. That's awesome. You can help grow grit from the outside in, meaning as a leader or as an influencer. And by the way, everybody in here has influence, so everybody in here is a leader. You're a leader. Sometimes we use the word leader. Oh, that's not me. Yes, it is. If you have influence over anybody, you're leading them. You're a leader. And the beauty is you can help grow grit from the outside in. As a leader, you can actually help foster an environment for grit to grow. As a parent, you can help foster an environment for grit to grow in your household. As an educator, you can help foster an environment for grit to grow in your classroom. As an employer, you can help foster an environment for grit to grow for your employees. You see? Good news. Hope is on the horizon, everybody. Life is on the horizon. The sun is bursting forth, teeming, waiting to poke through the clouds. If only you'd look up. You can grow grit from the inside out. You can also grow from the inside out. It's great news. Meaning you can actually put some things into practice to grow your grit. And what they found is this. There are 4 elements that grow grit in your pursuit from here to there. 4 things. And we're going to go through them. If you're taking notes, this is the moment where you're going to want to write in, here's how I grow my grit. And here's what it is. Number 1 is interest. Interest is about internally enjoying what you do. Am I interested in this? Do I internally enjoy any part of this thing that I'm taking, that I'm doing in my life? Do you actually, this is the question, do you actually want to do what you're doing? Do you want to do it? Do you actually want to build, we've talked about these words, right? Do you actually want to build hope in your life? Do you actually want to seek God and his kingdom first in your life? Do you actually want to work where you work? Do you have an interest in being a good parent? Do you have an interest in having a good marriage? If you don't have some baseline interest in what you're doing, then I'm just going to help you. There is no real realm that you're going to keep doing something day after day after day after day and just keep sludging through. You're not going to sign up one day and just go, I'll just sign up and I'll just white knuckle for 30 years. It's not going to happen. At some point, you're going to quit because there's no baseline interest at the beginning. So here's the questions. What are you genuinely interested in? Here's the questions. Ask yourself these questions. What do you like to think about? What do you really care about? And what matters most to you? What do you like to think about? What do you really care about? And what matters most to you? These are the things you're interested in. As you answer these questions, you're going to lay out a roadmap for the things you're genuinely interested in. And then once you've circled those things, now you're going to move on to number 2, which is practice. We talking practice? We talking practice. Allen Iverson, anybody? Okay. And then the Ted Lasso, the Ted Lasso one did it the reverse way, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm talking practice. I'm talking practice. Will your teammates need you? Okay, nobody? Okay. Anyway. Practice is continuing the pursuit of honing in on a specific skill or set of skills. That's what practice is. The honing in on a specific skill or set of skills. And what this zeroes in on is deliberate practice versus, it's deliberate practice. It's not talking about general practice. I'll give you a couple examples. Like, for instance, I played sports growing up, so I played basketball growing up. So if I wanted to practice generally in my basketball, I would go outside, I'd shoot some shots, I'd do some layups, I'd do a couple sprints maybe, I'd go back, do a couple more layups, do a couple more shots, I'd call it a day, I'd go inside. That's general practice. Deliberate practice is saying, I'm going to stay in this singular spot, and I'm going to take 100 shots from this spot. And until I can hit 80 out of 100 of these shots from this spot, I'm not leaving. That's deliberate practice. That's what it looks like. Another example in real life, is I worked with a guy on public communicating. This was a while back, and he said the body of your message, and it's just like a good essay, right? You have a body of your essay, you have your intro and conclusion. That's how public communication works at its base form and its 101 form as well. He said the body of your message is pretty good, but your intros and conclusions need some help. So my deliberate practice for the next season of that life was to continue to work on my intros, and I continue to work on the conclusions, and I just honed in on that. I did intro after intro after intro. I did conclusion after conclusion after conclusion. That's why I come out and I can so good at all these awkward intros, because I've worked at it. So it's about honing in on a specific set of skills. In our marriage, me and my wife, we did marriage counseling, and when we went to marriage counseling, our counselor told us, she said, something you need to work on is more honest communication. She said, you actually you guys love each other so much that you actually hold back from each other real truths because you're trying to overprotect one another. And so she encouraged us. She said, I'm not talking about being mean, but I'm talking about being honest. And so what did we work on for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months? We worked on honest communication. We would ask each other questions like, do you really mean that? Is that what you really think? I need to know your real truth, even if it's going to hurt me for a moment, so that we can work through it and get to a better, honest situation, conversation, and move forward. That's deliberate practice. And let me just help you. Here's the next step down. How do I get to deliberate practice? How do I know what to deliberately practice in my life? If you haven't picked up on it, in each analogy, in each picture I gave you, the deliberate practice came from receiving the ability to receive feedback. I like this crew today. You're really getting me going. And this is about to get fun. The ability to receive open and honest feedback. Ask yourself this question. Do you get feedback on the things that you say matter most to you? You said it matters most to you. Do you get feedback on the things that you say matter most to you? First, from yourself even. Do you walk, at the end of the day, you're done parenting your kids that day. I can tell you how the conversation in our house goes a lot. I'm such a bad parent. And the parent says, no, you're not a bad parent. I'm a bad parent. I'm the worst. That's not feedback. That's just saying something. But what if you start to actually ask yourself at the end of the day, what could I have actually done better in my parenting today? When I leave work, a lot of times I have a 15-minute drive home. I don't turn on music. I don't self-distract from myself and from my day. I actually try to go through the process of my day, and I think through thoughts. How could I have had that conversation better? How could I have ran that meeting better? How could I have been a little bit more productive in that 1 hour, hour and a half? How did I get off the rails? I was trying to get this accomplished today. I ended up getting nothing accomplished today. How do I get something accomplished tomorrow? What do I need to rehack? What do I need to rework? That's getting feedback from myself. You can also get feedback from your experiences. For instance, in the first service, I told a couple jokes. They didn't land. I cut those jokes. You don't have to hear them today. Hallelujah. That's getting feedback from your experience. You're looking at what happened the first time and going, I'm going to retweak that for the second time. And here's the last one, the one we really don't like. Do you get feedback on the things that you say matter most to you from others? You open up your life and say, okay, who's going to coach me? Does anybody have the right to tell you where does anybody have an open, honest feedback attachment in your life? I love this because in sports and music, most of us in some way, shape, or form did some type of sports or some type of music. I grew up in my teenage years. I started doing the drums, so I had a couple music teachers give me some lessons. In my younger years, I always grew up playing sports, and I love that, right? Because when we played sports or I'd do music, I would have a coach there or I'd have a teacher there, right? And what was their job? To help me get better. And how do they help me get better? They gave me honest and very open feedback. You're not doing it right. Give me the ball. Let me show you what I'm talking about when I talk about beef. Your balance is off. Your elbow's out. Your chicken wing over here. You're shooting sideways. What are you doing? Get your elbow in, tuck it in. Come on, and follow through. I don't care how it looks. Flop that wrist. All right? You need to get that wrist flop. Okay, on the drums, you're playing like this. Okay, get up. Let me show you how it's done. And there's not one time, at least this was back in my day and age, and I had old school parents who would have killed me if they heard this. There's not one time where I had a mental or emotional breakdown. They're being mean to me. They're not telling me. They're telling me I have to do things the right way and their way. Instead, I want to do it my way. That didn't happen. That never even occurred in my brain. That didn't go through my thought life. Why? Because that coach was there to help me improve. And the more coachable I was, the better chance at getting better I had. So I let that happen. I wanted that to happen. And a lot of times when it comes to sports or music or education or whatever, we understand this. We put teachers in our life. But then the things we've talked about today, parenting, relationships, finances, your career mindset, where's your coaches? If you're struggling in your marriage in 2023, and you haven't thought, who are you asking for feedback? Who is allowed to give you feedback? Who's allowed to give you fearless feedback? If you're struggling in your finances, who have you opened up your financial book to and said, here, help me? In 2023, we have a life coach for everything. We have a life coach for if you stub your toe too often. You can research it. Somebody will come help you, and they'll help organize your furniture and put blockers in so you do not walk through and stub your pretty little toes. We got a life coach for everything. We got a life coach for anything and everything on planet Earth. The other thing, you're sitting in a community right here. It's like 500-person community here at New Life, and just look to your left real quick, which is that way for you. It's that way for me. And then look to your right. There's humans here. Homo sapiens. That's wild. And you know what? Here's the truth. They do something. Somebody you just looked at does something better in life than you do. They've hacked it. They've figured out. And here's the other truth. You do something better than they do. And all it takes is you to have a tiny ounce of humility to go, I need help. And I need somebody to come into the situation. My marriage is struggling. My finances are struggling. My parenting is struggling. My career mindset is struggling. My work ethic sucks. I don't have one, but I see that you do have one, so I need help. And here's the deal. If you're not willing to look in this community and say, I see you as somebody who's crushed it here, and I would like some open and honest feedback from you, even though I know it's going to hurt a little bit at the beginning, or I'm not willing to go outside of the circle and go hire a life coach and get some help that way, then let me just help you. You found your problem. It's you, and it's your pride. That's what it is. So, it's not the end. Work on your pride. Work on your pride. Go to work on your pride so you can get back to the point where you ask the question and you start to get honest and clear feedback. Because the truth is, you need coaches in your life that don't simply tell you what you want to hear, but are willing to tell you what you need to hear to get to where you want. It doesn't always feel good in the moment, but if you'll cling to grit and stick through the process, the results are amazing. I can promise you that. So now, imagine this. Imagine you have your baseline interest intact, and you've started to put deliberate practice with fearless feedback in place. The next thing you're going to need, if you're going to keep going when life gets hard and continue to grow grit, is purpose. Purpose is feeding the belief that your work matters. It deeply matters. This is all about, it's building hope in my life matters to me right here and right now. Seeking God first in my life and his righteousness, I've decided that matters for me in my life. Working on my marriage truly matters. Working on my parenting really matters. The work I'm going to do week in and week out, does it really matter? And maybe I can't attach purpose to always, right? Maybe some of us, we can't attach purpose to our exact job. But if you say, I'm going to that job because I'm providing for my family, now there's a deeper sense of purpose for even a mundane task that I may be doing Monday at 12:30 p.m. You see what we did there? And here's the truth. If you can't find genuine purpose in your pain, then you're not likely to endure pain for very long. If you're not willing to endure obstacles and opposition or pain, then you're not very likely to get from here to there. Anybody with me? Okay, all with me. Okay. For instance, I'll give you a quick example. I like golf. I'm very interested in golf. I like to golf. I'll even do some deliberate practice in golf. I will go to the driving range. I'll hit some of these white golf balls down the road. Oh, yeah, that looks good. That was a good swing, right? That was pretty good. I like that. Oh, yeah, this feels good. You know, lock it in step, do the tiger roll. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, it went 20 yards to the right, but you still do the roll anyway, you know. If you can't play good, look good. And so you have this thing, like there's interest, and I'll put in deliberate practice, but then something happens. Like if I'm playing around, something happens around hour 4. If it's 83 degrees out, I'm sweating. As I'm 4 hours, I'm not hitting the ball well. What's the point of me putting this stupid white ball in a hole 450 yards down here? And eventually, I will get done with the round, and eventually it's just like, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. This is getting to be too hard. It's getting to be too difficult. I don't want to give my whole life to it. And there it is, right? I have interest, and I'm willing to put in some deliberate practice, but when the pain threshold gets too high, I leave because I don't have purpose in a white ball in a hole. I don't have purpose in it. I heard how it sounds. That's okay. I don't have purpose in that. Some other guys do. They'll be out there practicing 16, 17 hours a day. They've somehow attached a significant purpose. You're going to have to find the things in your life where you can attach a significant purpose to your pain. And if you're not attaching significant purpose to the pain, then you're just not going to go through it. You can try to will your way through it as much as you want. It's not going to happen. The moment it becomes a real struggle, the days get long, or it may not look as doable as you once believed, you're going to need a strong sense of purpose to accomplish the mission you've set out to accomplish. Purpose ultimately internally says, what I'm doing is important both to me and to others. That's real purpose. This matters to me deeply, and I believe it matters to others as well. Do you know, it's a great question to ask yourself, do you know why what you're doing is important, both to you and to others? Once you have interest, you have deliberate practice, and you have purpose in place, then there's one final thing that you must cling to in order to grow grit. And that's what we talked about in week 2, and that is hope. Hope. Hope is actually what allows you to get back up again and keep believing in the mission even after massive failures. Everybody say failure. Hope is what gets you back up after failure. Everybody say failure. Hope says it's okay to fail as long as you don't give up or quit. Duckworth says hope does not define only the last stage of grit, it defines every single stage. It shows up in interest, practice, and purpose. Without hope, grit is impossible. You must have hope. You must have hope of a greater day to come. You must have hope about what you're doing. See, what we find in a world and a society that is distracted by talent, the research here verifies that effort through grit counts twice as much as talent. And that's really good news, because not all of us were talented. Not all of us are talented. And here's the deal. At various points in big and small ways, as you're trying to move from here to there, you're going to get knocked down. Defeat in life is inevitable. Stop trying or fantasizing about this idea where you're going to wake up one day and defeat's gone, and opposition is gone, and struggle is gone. We we have to eradicate that from our brains. It's a fantasy. Stop. It's never going to happen. You're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be opposition. You're going to wake up tomorrow and defeat is going to be knocking at your doorstep. You're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be struggle required for you to move, for you to get out of bed. The older I get, the more struggle it's taking. We did a hike this last weekend. My knees were crying at me, screaming at me today. Just get out of bed. I was like, this sucks. Used to heal in 2 hours. Stop being shocked when it happens. Stop trying to take it away. Don't waste your time and energy wishing all the obstacles and opposition away. Again, at various points in big and small ways, we all get knocked down. If you stay down, grit loses and you lose. If you get back up, grit prevails and you prevail. Much of our ability to get back up and keep moving forward will have to do with believing that we can grow grit and that failure is not fatal. Failure's not fatal. Your failure's not fatal. I don't know what you brought in today. I don't know what baggage you're carrying today. I don't know if some parenting stuff has failed for you lately. I don't know if relationships have failed. I don't know if marriages have failed around you. I don't know if finances have begun to fail around you. I don't know if your career is failing around you. But I need you to know that it's not the end. I need you to know that that is not the period at the end of your life. If you're still sitting here breathing, there is a comma there, and there's another sentence, there's another stanza, there's another paragraph, there's another chapter waiting to be rewritten. Failure's not fatal. It's not permanent. And that should allow you to have some hope of better days ahead, even if you're sitting in the midst of failure. And I'm going to ask you, why would you be so afraid of failure anyway? Don't you know that many of the greatest success stories are really stories of extreme failure? For instance, there's a couple guys, 3 guys started a company, and they tried to make phone games. They made 51 games, and they went broke. They decided to make one more game with the last bit of money they had. They sketched 10 ideas a day, and Angry Birds is the result. That's the game, you know of that today. There's another guy named Kevin. He started to learn coding at night after work. He made a prototype of a social app called Bourbon. Not that type of bourbon. Don't get too excited. I got too excited, and then I found out it wasn't that type of bourbon. They got $500,000 in funding from investors. $500,000 from funding from investors. He took the money, he took all of that money, all that $500, and he built an awful photo app with it. It failed miserably. Woo! Could you imagine $500,000 down the toilet? People put their faith in you for $500,000, you let them all down. Could you imagine the failure he must have felt? With a little bit of money that he went out and accrued, he went back to his original version called Bourbon, B-U-R-B-N. He made it into an iPhone app, and it failed. So he threw out everything in the app. He decided just to stick to photos. He launched it on a Monday, and within a few hours, it became the #1 photo app in the Apple Store. You know that app as Instagram today. Mark Cuban was a bartender at his own bar until he was 25 years old. Harrison Ford was a carpenter into his 30s. Ray Kroc, who's the founder of McDonald's, was 52 years old selling paper cups and milkshake mixers door to door. Mary Kay Ash, up until age 45, sold books and home goods door to door. Andre Bocelli was a piano player at bars until age 33. J.K. Rowling was a 31-year-old single mom on welfare. Walt Disney was fired by a newspaper editor because he, quote, lacked imagination and had no good ideas. Elvis Presley was fired after one performance at the Grand Ole Opry. He told Presley, the manager told Presley, you ain't going nowhere, son. You ought to go back to driving a truck. Henry Ford failed and went broke 5 times before he finally succeeded. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Winston Churchill failed 6th grade. He was subsequently defeated in every single election for public office until he finally became prime minister at the age of 62. He later wrote these iconic words, never give in, never give in, never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never, 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 never give up. Never give up. Never give up, because failure is not fatal. And I think we have this idea somewhere in our brains that these individuals we're talking about are quote-unquote American heroes succeeded because they must not have failed as badly as us. They must have had old money. They must have had a silver spoon given to them. They must have had something that, you know what? They did have something you don't have, that you and I maybe don't have as much. They had what's called grit. They had grit. They had this idea and this concept that it was okay if they failed 100 times. There was no doubt in their minds they were coming back for their 101st. Thomas Edison actually said, while inventing the light bulb, he even said, I have not failed. I've simply found 10,000 ways that won't work. Well, good on you. Really, the only reason these people ever arrived at success is because they never gave failure the last word. Why would you give failure the last word over your life? Why would you give failure the last word over your marriage? Why would you give failure the last word over your parenting? It's a cop-out. It's a coward's way out. And you're not a coward. You're a fighter. The video at the beginning of this message said, I will fight. And I believe God's still looking for that. Who will fight? Who will run with perseverance? Who will show some persistence? Who will continue to show up and get grit? In fact, this whole message we could summarize in those 4 words. Don't quit, get grit. Don't quit on your marriage, get grit. Don't quit on your parenting, get grit. Don't quit on your finances, get grit. Don't quit on your career, get some grit. Don't quit on the thing that you're trying to get from here to there. Don't quit on it, get some grit and keep moving. Grow some grit. Don't quit. Grow grit. Grit is absolutely needed in life because defeat in life is inevitable. And the last thing we'll say today is we don't just see the principle here and now. We don't just see it in 2023, and we don't just see it in a list of some quote-unquote American heroes. We see it in the pioneer of grit himself, Jesus Christ, the absolute hero of our faith. In fact, in Hebrews 12, we read verse 1, but verse 2 and 3 go on to say, it says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, for the joy set before him, he endured, everybody say endured the cross, scorning his shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And then in verse 3, it goes on to say, consider him who endured, everybody say endured, such opposition. The Son of God himself endured opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Do you understand that Jesus endured the pain of the cross? Jesus endured opposition from sinners in his 3 years of ministry. Jesus endured these things. And if you go through it, you can look it through. For the why? For the joy set, for the hope set before him. For the joy set before him. Because he could see that there were greater days ahead. He was willing to endure pain for this moment because of what was lying ahead. If you go through it, you could look at the interest. You could look at practice. You could see that he had an interest in relationship with humanity. God has an interest in relationship with humanity, so he comes down to earth and he dwells with us and he spends time with us and he deliberately practiced. And if you read through the Gospels, you see deliberate practice of moment after meaningful moment after meaningful moment with us for 3 years, from the lowest types of people in caste system to the highest of that current caste system. He spent time with them and he deliberately practiced meaningful moments. And he had a purpose. He wanted to bring hope. He wanted to bring life and life abundant. He wanted to bring joy that was there through it all. And so when he meets the cross, one of the most painful ways of dying, he says, I'm willing to endure it because I have an interest and I have deliberately practiced and I have a purpose in mind. And my hope is that one day, even 2,000 years from now, someone would still be talking about the love of God and they would come into relationship with me, and then I would remind them that there is hope, that there is life, and that there is joy for them, and there's no reason. If the OG, if the very pinnacle and the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith was willing to endure that type of opposition so that you could have hope, life, and joy, why would you not go through some pain? Just a little bit of opposition. Grow your grit and recognize that you have a life to be lived and a life abundant. That there is hope all around you if you look up. That the sun is bursting through the clouds, waiting to be seen. And there's joy, an abundant joy that is yours for the taking. Because there is a God who came down as a man, who died 2,000 years ago to proclaim that. And when he did, he said, it is finished. The heavens are open. The heavens are open, y'all. The heavens are open. All it's going to take is a little bit of grit, and you can access heaven today. God, I thank you for this morning. I thank you for this community. God, I pray that we would not be a community that would be all about the video moment, the hype, but that we would be a community and a group that would actually be willing to grow some grit, to reach hope, to reach life, to reach joy, to seek the kingdom of God, that we'd be willing to go through some opposition, to seek the kingdom of God and put you first. God, that we would be reminded that you have purpose for us today, that you have life for us today, that you have joy for us today. That you would reveal to each person in this room even where they can grow some grit. What area? God, I pray that you would reveal to us right now that your Spirit would begin to just pinpoint some areas for each one of us individually where we can grow our grit. What area we need to grow our grit in. That it would lead to hope, life, and joy like never before. And I pray for that in Jesus' name. Amen.